Hello, I'm Earl, and welcome to Speaking of Everything. I have a very interesting gentleman on the program. He's a St. Martiner, very brilliant young man, Mr. Delano Richardson. How are you doing, sir?
Very good, Earl. Thank you so much for the opportunity to come and have an interview with you. I think over the years I've had maybe this is maybe the fourth interview we've had with each other.
Right.
But I'm glad to be here with you.
It's good to have you here because the first time I interviewed you, you was a young guy,
True.
Still at the university in the Netherlands, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah, I had come at that time. I think we were doing the Greater Phillipsburg exhibition, and we don't want to talk age, but that was in just after Lewis, and that was 1996. When we did the Greater Phillipsburg exhibition at the time, and surprisingly, years later, I worked at the SER. You know that recently. And the SG, Mr. Richardson, he was at that exhibition at the time, and he reminded me. He said, "You don't remember me, but I was there as one of the students who shared in that exhibition that you did back in those days." So it really was an interesting connection.
Very. So you, by profession, you're an architect or engineer? How does it go?
Well, I'm an architectural engineer by profession. But because of the nature of my training, I did 5 years for my master's. And the reason I did 5 years is because at the university at the time, I either could have done it in 1 year and done the Cultural Center for St. Martin, because that was one of the things that was happening at the time, or I could do something a little bit more interesting, I thought, which was my PhD proposal. So I took my PhD proposal and made it my master's because I was pretty much ready, and my PhD proposal was VASO, which is a global logistics terminal. So in other words, a terminal that included airports, harbors, train terminals, etc., and spaceport. And that was basically to create a jump point, 6 jump points around the planet. So I graduated actually with I call it a minor or so in global logistics, regional planning, and space tourism. So I have my architecture degree, but I have all of these other amenities that I bring to the table, in terms of other factors.
You had a lot of vision for St. Martin.
Correct.
And as a young man, and now today, 30 years later, almost 30 years later, how you see St. Martin architectural-wise in your vision?
Well, what I can tell you is this. At that time, and then also when I became the head of RUM at that time, I was there for 2 years. And we did call it the infrastructure for the 12 development plan of 12 areas of St. Martin. And one of the biggest issues that was now going on maybe 15 years ago was that St. Martin was evolving very quickly. So everybody was like, hey, we have to slow St. Martin down. Maybe we should put a block on development, etc. And but what was now interesting is either you can stop it or recognize who you are as a country. And by recognizing who you are, that means then you can begin to adjust to figure out what you need to put in place to evolve. So in that sense, we could say, and I don't want to use superheroes in the package, but imagine St. Martin like a Spider-Man or a Superman, and he's put into action when the time comes. And then you see his new suit, his outfit, his this and that. St. Martin's development strategy had to be, in other words, don't run from its power. Absorb its power, recognize its power, and then in that perspective begin to shape and prepare for that, absorb that. So what's been going on is a lot of areas are saying we don't want that development, but the problem is that St. Martin is in a sense at the needle point of development within the region, and that's not pretty much all our fault. It's also because of St. Bart's, which is really nearby, and a lot of development and infrastructure, etc., seemingly has an effect, has a result because of that.
But didn't we go through that in the 80s and 90s, and now we're seeing it again?
Yes, correct. What you're saying is true. For instance, we had Mullet Bay and all the other development that happened at that time. So could we say that we are going through another in a sense, called golden age, where the development is happening. Some have said in a mushroom form. It's like, wow, all of a sudden. But the main thing was, before, when Irma hit, then COVID hit, nobody believed that St. Martin would be where it is today again. Not that it's perfect, but it's again evolving, and now you're seeing many different buildings and structures going on in St. Martin. So from where I was back then to when I got into the position to manage the island, and then finally here we are now, to seeing the many different transitions that St. Martin has gone through. The main question for people is, are the people of St. Martin benefiting from all this construction that's going on?
But people, Mr. Richardson, I got to ask you this, because I was at a club meeting and we had a bank manager, and I said there's a huge construction boom.
Yes.
And the bank manager turned to me and said, where? I said, but it's all over the island. Even your bank is financing some of these projects. So some people are in denial.
You are saying it correct. Right now, I live in South Reward, right? And I look out my window. I see 6 or more construction sites going on in Valley High. Maybe because of financial circumstances, certain banks had said no to people for a while. But then, of course, they got their act together, or however it happened, that the bank finally approved. And now construction is happening. In Don Beach and Defiance, in different areas there, you're seeing a lot of construction happening, as well as now over, of course, in Simpson Bay area, down in Coal Bay, and also in Lowlands, Cooper Coy area. There's much development happening in different places, some in the high end, some in the other areas of the island, but it is happening.
So you got to be blind to don't see that.
So in general, the main question, like I say again, who is earning, who's participating in the construction arenas, and also in terms of jobs, there are a lot of different kinds of jobs out there, but the question is, do I want to do that job or not? And again, as things have happened, people have to change the kind of work they do, type of things they do, because again, it's not inexpensive living on St. Martin because of the fact that we are a tourist destination. So a lot of times the prices are very high, and because we do a lot of import. We're like Singapore. We bring everything in. So people have to buy things at a much higher price many times.
But what do you think about, seeing that you're an engineer and architect, and we have a lot of people on St. Martin, back in the days before you and I were born, they built this island. We didn't have architects and workers coming in from abroad. It's all forefathers who did it. How you see today, because today you're probably part of a little handful of people in your profession from St. Martin, and we can't find any real skilled tradesmen from St. Martin anymore. Does that surprise you?
What you're saying is correct. There's a lot of the trade work, as you would say, that is happening on the island is not being done by locals. And is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Because from what in terms of my research, a lot of times skilled workers were brought from abroad, whether from Italy, Spain, different parts of Europe, or even in America now more recently, to do certain skilled work. Here in the region, we have also stone work, mason work, carpentry work, and we have a lot of skilled carpenters that come from Guyana and Grenada, other areas of the Caribbean who come. I have a good construction guy out of Antigua, who have trained, and because in some of the other islands they have certain training packages that they have where you get a certain level of skills. So they come to the island also to do some work. But what you're saying is correct. I've had an experience on construction sites where the local would recognize their quote unquote benefits and take advantage of that and not show up for work. So they would say, oh, the locals are not gonna fulfill their task obligations. But not all locals are like that, because I'm not like that. But there are a lot of locals who might be like that, but there are a lot of locals who are hard workers who put their time and energy in, but they're not let's put it this way, in terms of respecting them and giving them the opportunity to evolve, that might be some of the things that hinders.
I'm going to have
their
to
involvement.
interrupt you, and I'm going to interrupt you
Not a
often
problem.
because I
Not a
have a
problem.
time frame here.
Yes.
Could it be also the pay factor? Because a guy coming from Guyana is willing to work for less, and a guy coming from Jamaica is willing to work for less money than a guy that's from St. Martin.
No, what you're saying is true, but also there are certain numbers that are on the table. For instance, the guy from the other islands might come and they might work for less, yes, but the quality of the work is going to be the same. But now if you're going to be paying the same guy or local guy a certain amount of money, and then the level of work that they're going to produce is not the same of the other guy from abroad.
I gotta tell you, I have to disagree there with you. Let me
Go
tell you
ahead,
why. You know,
disagree.
I've built a few homes and commercial places in St. Martin. What I notice, a lot of workers that come from the neighboring islands, they don't come with any skills.
Correct.
They gain those skills here in St. Martin. And a lot of people don't realize that you go to a construction site, the plumber learned to be a plumber in St. Martin, the mason, the same thing. Not all of them, but many of them.
But
And I think that one is, I'm trying to.
So what you're saying is correct. There are a lot of times that they earn and learn their skills here.
Right.
So like what you're saying then, me and you don't disagree. Why? Because there are different nuances to that idea. For instance, a guy can come to St. Martin, many of them come and they learn their skills here. They're trained. Whereas there are a lot of them who come and also bring new skills to the table that were not there. So there's this play of actions. Now, the pay for a laborer. For instance, because after COVID, everybody carried their price twice as much. So let's say if some guy, a mason, was charging $80, all of a sudden he's charging $150.
Oh, yeah.
So how are you going to play in that market? No, why?
But
Because
who determines that? The market, right?
the market determines that, but guess what? To be clear, there's no real structure in that industry.
And you
For
think
instance,
there should be a structure in
there
it?
should be.
Or to let the market decide?
Well, right now it's fluid. When I say fluid, meaning there's no real structure in place for contractors, for call it architects, for call it appraisers.
For nobody,
or
basically.
For real
Yeah,
estate.
yeah.
There's no real
Right.
structure in place. Any and every certificate, call it approval or assessment, is done from outside. So if somebody say you're certified, you're not certified in St. Martin, you may be certified in Canada, America, or Europe or someplace else, but there's no certification process here in St. Martin for those types of fields. So if somebody's doing construction work on St. Martin, they're approved based on their work that they've done before. So they're
Based on a reference of somebody to
reference.
say,
You see the quality of their work and you say, hey, I want you to work for me, things like that.
But I've seen a drop in the quality of work and workmen on St. Martin. I'm telling you from my experience, it's hard to find skilled labor on this island, both locally and those that came into the island. And if you look at construction that was done in the 70s, the 80s, and 90s, you look at some construction that was done the last 15, 20 years, there's basically no comparison at all in terms of the quality.
So what you just say there now, and we're going to merge that on a global level, because technology is doing the same thing, right? So in other words, you might get a phone, you have your phone, and if you go in, I'm not a phone guy, but let's say I were to take that phone apart. All the pieces used to be from a certain quality, but today the pieces come from all over the world and they put them together. They know what pieces they're putting together and the quality of those pieces. Whereas in St. Martin now, when you come to construction, the ones who are doing the work, that's why I can tell you, my mother's over 40 years in construction, right? And her rule is you stay on the site.
Yeah.
Why? Because sometimes, like you said, the quality of the work, sometimes they want to do something less, but you have to be there to make sure.
Really?
Don't let them do this. Don't let them. They want to use less thinner steel or less steel.
So your mother stay at the site? Your mother stay at the site all the time?
My mother's main pro action for construction is from 6 to 6. She's there every day with her money.
Oh, I love her, man.
She considers her money because she doesn't want her money to be wasted. Nails and everything on the ground, she picks everything up. Nothing's to be wasted.
But you know what? They hate that. They hate it when they see you there all the time.
They do. But even though they hate it, guess what? It is your project. So you have to manage your project and be there and make the decision.
You know, the guy told me he left the site, left the guys working, they poured the floor, and a few months later the floor collapsed. Why? There was no steel between the concrete and the ground floor.
Yeah. For example, I'm on the site and they're tying up the steel. They finished tying it. I said, but why you guys didn't tie this one? They say, well, you don't have to because the other parts. I said, no, tie everything. I've seen retaining walls come down. Other things happen. When they come down, they realize that the certain steels were not tied, so it was not properly structured.
And you have the knowledge. Yeah. You have the background.
Yes.
I mean, I'm surprised they will question you. I can see them questioning me because I'm not an engineer. But
yeah, but you see, even they're gonna do it. But again, the most important thing about that is it's your project, you're responsible, you have to then make sure they do it. Because if you're not there and they do it, then it gets away from you. You can't cry later when something happened. So you need to make sure either you're there or you have someone who has the knowledge to make sure that it's done. Or you tell them, before you take any action, I need to know what's going on.
But let me ask you, in your profession, if someone is building a house, they have no knowledge, they have some people working, they can hire you and have you come over on a weekly basis or whatever, look at the construction progress and give advice? Yeah,
that happens. I'm also to supervise a project or stuff like that.
I'm saying it in a very simple term. One of our people, this is for our people.
So that's fine. You know, on every level, because remember, I was working at the government in the position to manage and to sign off all permits.
So you saw all those different things.
All the different projects, a lot of projects on St. Martin I signed off. And at that time, they didn't have an ER, a qualified person to man the post.
You're the only one, right?
I'm the only one at that time, But there are a couple of other ERs on the island now. I mean, Yuri Dahl from ICE is also engineer, but he's a construction engineer. I'm the architectural engineer on the island. There might be one or two others, but who have studied and have their degree, but they don't walk in it. They don't
so they can get you to do the supervision for them.
They could get me to do a supervision for them. That's some things that I do.
But don't you think it's important, because a lot of people later on find out the hard way when they don't have that?
I've done a lot of redesigns for people, I can tell you that. And I've also done, when you call it supervision. But also, when more important is that you have a situation where somebody has a project, they had it done by call it a draftsman or someone who's saying, "Oh, I'm an architect," you know, and then within that.
What's the difference between a draftsman and an architect?
Well,
simple, very simple, very simple.
But you know what? In every country, they have it structured where there are different tasks for different persons, right? And within that, the architect facilitates, in terms of international knowledge of all the different architectural issues that could come up, as well as within the design, they're looking at the long-term, short-term factors that could exist. And also within that, they're looking then at, for instance, the structural potential that can happen. And then from there, you work with either the construction engineer, the draftsman, who then, once you're finished with the concept, once you're finished with the working out all the pieces of the puzzle, then the draftsman comes in to draw out the project in its technical form. That is what the draftsman does. Now, an architect also has the capacity to do that, but most and often, these jobs are separate within their context. Now, what happens on St. Martin is that in terms of recognition, a lot of times draftsmen have worked with architects for a while, and then when they now have to do their job, they just say, listen, I'm an architect, so I'm going to do it. But they're going based on examples that they've seen in the past, not to say that they're not good, not to say that it might not work, and that it does work. In fact, it's happening a lot on St. Martin. But the main question is later. The main problem with that is later, you will have to, let's say 5 years later, 6 years later, you realize, wait a minute, the bathroom is in the wrong place. Why did that wall was there? So then also now you have to spend money again to renovate, adjust, fix things when if you had done it, many people are scared to pay an architect because an architect might be, for instance, a draftsman might be $3,000, whereas an architect might be $12,000.
Yeah.
So why would I want to pay an architect compared to a draftsman? So, yeah, so this is what you're looking at. I don't know how else you would want to give an example of that. You know, so, but anyway, go ahead.
I got to go to a quick break, all right?
No
In case you've just joined us, this is Speaking of Everything. I'm here speaking with Mr. Delano Richardson. He's an architectural engineer in Simon, right? How long now
I'm here now since 2007. I'm back,
Yeah.
but I've been involved in my field. Like I tell you, I started when I was 15, you know, and I went away to study.
So 30-something years.
Yeah.
Right. And so he's my guest here. I interviewed him many years ago when he was very young guy. Back in you was 21, so
Somewhere
22.
there, yeah.
Right. And since that time, I've interviewed him about 2 more times. This is about the 4th time. It's always a pleasure having him on the program. And when we come back after this break, continue with Mr. Delano Richardson right here on Speaking of Everything and Hot 99.9 FM radio. Merry Christmas from the Cake Box, your one-stop for cakes, pies, and tarts this holiday season. Order now your pies, your cakes, your puddings such as potato pudding and bread pudding, tarts such as coconut, guava berry, prunes, and guava tart. And don't forget the house special, the melt away. To order, please call Genius at VR Catering, telephone number 581-2171 or 522-6497.
We are vibrant, expressive, warm, and diverse. Together, we conquer, and now we expand into new horizons, giving you more of the best. Introducing our new Bankomatico Plus with wider acceptance, purchase protection, and enhanced security. Whether you're online, traveling, or in paradise, experience more with Windward Island Bank. Bankomatico Plus, more of the best.
Mr. Delano Richardson is my guest here on Speaking of Everything, and Speaking of Everything is on YouTube, Facebook, and Hot 99.9 FM radio. It's always a pleasure to have him on the program. You know, there's so many things we have to speak about. We can't do it in a half hour.
True.
So we're going to have to do a follow-up, right? Yeah. So you said earlier that draftsman is not an architect, and you're going to get what you pay for, basically, right?
Correct.
Yeah. When you look at construction from a local perspective, I said it many times. I said it many times here in this program. I do these programs for our people because I want them to understand what's going on. We've built our own homes over the years.
Correct.
You know, your knowledge and what you see now. What do you think are the mistakes being made by new home owners, people who want to not buy a home, but build a home and go to an architect, get a contractor, do all the different things?
Well, the biggest mistake is they're looking at the money. So when you look at the money, you're starting wrong because...
but they have a budget, basically.
They have a budget. When I say they're starting wrong, I mean it in this way. You have an interest in accomplishing something. So the question is, let's say it's like you're making a decision on something that's not your professional capacity. You know, you can come to an architect and say, listen, this is what I'm thinking. And then within the context or the arena, for instance, of St. Martin, back in the day, people could say, yeah, I want to build a beautiful house with a nice yard and continue. But because of the fact that you got to pay the bank, you got to take care of your children later, you got a long term, you're going to have to send them to school. So you got to think, if you're going to make an investment today, 10 years, 20 years from now, you're not going to be able to get that money again. So the money you invest now, you got to be careful how you spend that.
Very good point.
So for that reason, when I say people look at the money, I mean that they're not realizing that the long term is coming, and you need to organize how you're going to spend that money properly right now. I can tell you, I learned that from my mother, again, because she invested so that she could prepare for the future. And she has done an incredible job for each of her children and provided that each of us would have some kind of a long-term benefit. So I can't say when I go to a project that I can just tell them, oh, just do whatever you want. I have to put that knowledge and insight in perspective. So when you ask what are the mistakes people make or could make, that is one of the most important elements that determine how the project is going to be successful or not. Because if it's a home and that's what you want to do, go ahead. But I want to also make you aware of all the other pieces of the puzzle before you step into that kind of a fire, in a sense, you know?
No, some people say after 10 years, some say after 15, others after 20. On a new home that was built, you have major repairs to be made. Is it 15, 10, or 20 year thing, or quality of construction?
Yeah, that's a good one. You could normally, they say every 5 years, you should maintain.
That's much better. That's costly, right? Yeah.
The best thing is every 5 years, see what's going on. You want to paint, you want to fix this or that, because by doing every 5 years, you know that it's going to continue to go. You know, but again, with money concern, they think, hey, I don't have the money to spend on that, so they wait 10 years. But then sometimes it's going to cost you more.
Yeah.
You see, so by saying, listen, the money's coming in, I got to pay this, and then I put a certain amount aside, 5%, 2%, 3% every month. So that's your maintenance budget, and then after 5 years, you have some money there that you can then put towards getting that done. But it is very important, like you say, you asked the question about maintenance. Yeah, it's very important because sometimes there's certain things that you did with your project, and then later you realize you got to now fix it or maintain it. And maybe the technologies change, and you need to now get certain other equipment to fix it. So by doing it every 5 years, you stay kind of up to date with the changes in the arena. The technologies, building materials, etc. Sometimes windows have to be changed. You got to take out all your windows, put in new windows because of our context here, hurricane, whatever else. Sometimes you have the zinc screws or the wood, the things that are holding down your roof. If you have a zinc, or even if you have a concrete roof, over time because of the sun, you might get cracks, leaking. So you have to then seal it in a different way. So you can't let it go too far out of control before you take action on it.
So Richardson, man, time is going so fast. We got to do a follow-up.
For sure,
right?
For sure.
If people want to get in touch with you, can they call you?
Yes, they can call me at 526-0139, or they can email me at, it's just d.richsonplus@gmail.com. But in general, most people know me.
Yeah.
You know, they can come up to me and have a conversation.
What's the name of your company?
Richardson Plus.
Okay, good. Anyway, it's always a pleasure having you. And I hope I can have you back in a few more months from now to do a little follow-up because I have a lot of questions to ask you. All right?
Very good. Okay, Thank you so much again, Ron.
Thank you and all the best. And that's it for now. We'll see you next time on Hot 99.9 FM Radio, Facebook, and YouTube with Speak About Everything. Take care. Bye.